Joy is a gift in the awareness of death. And when we realize how precious our life is, it makes us want to do something with our life.
Welcome back, everyone, to the A Little More Courage podcast. We're so stoked to have you. And today we're really excited. We're going to be sharing and having a conversation with a friend. But we wanted to start off just with a little bit of framing the topic that we're going to talk about. And a recent health survey came out that showed that 42% of Gen Z is currently struggling with mental health. And of that 42%, 90% of them responded that they were struggling with anxiety, and 78% responded that they were struggling with depression. It's no surprise to any of us listening that there's currently an epidemic of mental health and depression and anxiety in our culture. And one thing that we found interesting is we typed in joy on Google just to see what is the definition of joy. And it says a feeling of great pleasure and happiness. But I think what we're going to find out today in this conversation is that there's actually a lot more to joy than what Google will tell you, a feeling of great pleasure and happiness. And so we're so excited to have a conversation with our good friend today.
Hi, Maia. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Oh my goodness. What a sweet conversation to get to have.
Yeah. And so backstory to how Maia and how we all met each other is we both did a TEDx talk at the same location, and we met there. And when I met you, I was like, this girl is amazing.
Same.
I'm sure we're going to get into like what you talked about in your TED talk, but it was just cool to see that you were truly living what you were speaking about in every little interaction. Like, you're just a lover of people. Any person that you interact with, you love them so well and you're so present for them. But I would just love to know, like, just for somebody who's never met you, like, tell us about yourself. What is your story?
Oh, that was so sweet. Oh, thank you so much for just all those kind words. Those truly mean the world, and I take them all to heart. So thank you so much. And it was an absolute same just getting to meet you at TED Talk. And honestly, every interaction we've had since, it's just been such a blessing. So I'm so thankful for the both of you. So proud of you too, your marriage, just all that you guys are doing. But I am Maia. Nice to meet anyone who I haven't got to meet before. Some call me MM, friends and whatnot. I live in Florida. And I am married to the absolute love of my life. I wish he was here right here. I'm kind of jealous. Y'all get to be together. I'm like, I wish I had my husband right here. But he's the love of my life. He's a boy version of me. You say that I love people. If anyone loves people and can talk to people more than I can, it is my husband. I don't think we ever are quiet. So it's been so sweet just to be married. We've been married a year now. And we don't have any kids yet, but we do have a little fur baby who is our whole world. Striking a little puppy. I was just telling them about earlier, but we move a lot for my husband's job. He's playing baseball right now. And so we have moved, I think it's 5 times since we've been married, all over the place. We're about to make it a 6th, a 7th, and an 8th this next year.
That's wild.
I know, yeah. Maybe more. Who knows? You never know in this lifestyle. So it's been really fun. It's been just a really sweet season. Amongst all that, or along all that, I have a faith-based business where I just really focus on spreading love, truth, and light. And it has been the greatest joy of my life, besides just the people in it. It's just been such a sweet gift. And so I guess that's a little about me. I love being with people. I love just being outside. I love art, painting, all that kind of stuff. One of my best friends she's been in town. We've been working on a puzzle together, and it's been just so fun. Just anything that I can do with my hands or just working. I love it. So hence why I make clothes and all that kind of stuff, because it's just fun to me. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I mean, of course, there's lots of other fun, interesting things, probably weird things, most people would say, but that's a little bit.
And you did your TED Talk on a really interesting subject, and it was about uncomfortable joy. Mm-hmm. And I would love for you to share with us, like, how did you choose that? And what does uncomfortable joy mean to you?
Oof, good question. that topic. So for TED Talk, which was one of the greatest things that I've ever gotten to do, just one of the most challenging things, I'm sure you could attest that. It was one of the most challenging things because it's just under so much refinement, and rarely in our lives, I feel like, are we ever, just refining. I mean, the process was like 6 months or whatnot, but it was funny because right before the deadline, I got a email the day before asking if I would submit something. So I only had like a day to submit my topic that I was going to do a TED Talk possibly on. And it was so crazy because the Lord had just prepared me in so many ways before that, having no idea that any of this would happen. But about a year before, I had gotten in a car accident and I had should have passed away. It was I was hit by a drunk driver, and I remember after that I struggled with so much anxiety, fear of just getting back in the car, of being alive, of just when you're so close to passing away or so close to losing your life. It just, everything is so fragile after that, so it's so hard to just not see life like that and not let that anxiety overwhelm you. So I really struggle with that. And then my grandfather passed away shortly afterwards. And then my other grandfather passed away shortly afterwards. And I was just going through for just a blanket statement, uncomfortable time. Like I was going through just so much that was just absolutely difficult and heartbreaking and frustrating. And even before that too, I had always kind of had this fascination with not being comfortable. I'd always been like, whenever I would see myself in comfortable time periods in my life, I always had noticed how I just wasn't growing at all, or I just wasn't even reaching my not full potential, but it wasn't how I was supposed to live. And so it's crazy because then all that happened, and how I went through life, how I saw life just completely changed. It was so uncomfortable. And then I started to really think about, how do you have joy, amidst all these things that are going on? Like, this is a part of life, like if you're real, like this is a part of life. Uncomfortable moments are. And so, how do I have like joy during these uncomfortable moments? And it was honestly me just wrestling with that for a year. And just honestly though, the wrestling was so beautiful because I found just so much peace in it and getting to do it. And it really truly brought me joy. That uncomfortable brought me joy because it brought me to a deeper understanding and to realize that joy wasn't, for me, an uncomfortable joy. It doesn't mean that those time periods in my life that I didn't have anxiety, that I didn't have pain, that I didn't have fear. It meant that I had joy alongside them, that I had joy, that my hope is in heaven, that all those different things. That was something I didn't really get to mention in TED Talk, is how much of the joy really comes from the Father. But it was such a beautiful thing to see that, okay, Maya, I'm going through this hard time, but there is a joy from the Father that surpasses all understanding, that is still available amidst all those things. And so just really it was so cool how the year before I remember this one conversation too I had with one of my friends, and she was just kind of in this spot where she didn't know if she wanted to take like an uncomfortable step. And I was like, well, I was like, what's holding you back? And she's like, the fear, the unknown, and all these different things. And I remember we just started talking about how she was just so comfortable. And she was like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to get outside my comfort zone. And that's when that's where the Lord kind of gave it in my heart. It's like, well, that uncomfortability is like a place where you grow. It's a place where, beautiful things happen, and just kind of encouraging her to take that step. And then she did. And it was just awesome. Beautiful things came from it. But it was crazy because just having that conversation, even I go back to it and I'm like, wow, little did I know all the things that the Lord would teach me in that through that little conversation. And then I got the email, and I played with a few topics, but that one was just one that I felt like was so fascinating to me to dive more into. And I just felt like it was something that was so kind of countercultural, and something that our generation and just people really needed to hear, that, we're all going through, we've all will at some point go through an uncomfortable time, and like, how do you have joy during that? And that was something that I just knew, and I wanted hopefully to let the Lord just change people's hearts with. And just seeing that. So anyways, that's kind of the roundabout story of how I really got there and got to really choosing that topic, and then refinement.
So good. I love it. I'm curious, Maya. Because I was surprised when I typed into Google, what's the definition of joy? And it said feelings of happiness and pleasure. And I feel like, especially being a Christian, that definition is very much lacking and even incorrect on the definition of joy. But I'm curious how you would define joy. Like, what is the difference between joy and feelings?
That's a big question.
It's a big question for sure. But the difference between, feelings of pleasure and happiness and joy, is there a difference there? Or is it just like a feeling of...
I feel like our human language, it's like that emotion that you feel that our human language is like trying to describe. We say happy or we say joy, but really either one. I mean, it's that emotion that you're trying to describe when you have that elatedness, when like almost like tears are brought to your eyes, or when you just you see life for the true beauty that it is. I think that's a very like big part of it. It's just a word that we're trying to use, to describe this beautiful thing that the Lord has given us, which is life or breath in our lungs, or, whenever you get the parking spot or whatever. It's just like this joy of like, yes, like I'm alive. And I feel like that's where that definition is kind of missing. It's like, we just think of it as like a feeling, or, you know what I mean? It's like, no, it's like actually like almost like the awareness of the gift that you're alive. Like, I guess that's how it's totally not definition. Don't Webster me. Don't do that. I truly feel like, I mean, I even get like excited. It's like that moment kind of, I feel like joy is like just the presence, the ability, and it's something that you live with and you live in, of realizing that you're alive, that you have breath in your life, the gift of it. And also, and then when you're a Christian and you believe in the Lord, it's like that gift is even greater, because then you realize that you're alive with the Lord, and that's where you experience that true joy, and so anyways, I feel like that's kind of, don't definition me on that, but I feel like that's the best way I can kind of describe it as to how I've been learning about it.
As I listen to you, I would say, I would like word it in one sentence as like, joy is a gift in the awareness of death.
Yes.
Because and when we realize how precious our life is, it makes us want to do something with our life. And we don't want, when we realize like we want to do something with our life, it's a very natural choice to want to do something good and holy, and not sit and be like sad for days and days on end. Like we want to get out of that and know that there's a place above it. Or even when you were talking earlier, I was thinking like, I feel like joy is when you choose to like smile in the rain and laugh in the storm.
Exactly.
It's like that choice. Like I'm going through the tough times of life, but I'm still gonna laugh. Like, like even this last week, Jack and I have had some hard moments, and yet we've just looked at each other and like laughed. And like this morning, we were literally like dancing like goofballs. And it was just like that choice to be like, this is tough, but there's something far greater, and I'm still gonna like dance and like laugh in this moment.
Something that's interesting, Maya, as I'm listening to you and thinking about your TED Talk, because essentially you were sharing, it's uncomfortable joy. You were able to find joy in negative situations. And we had a conversation with, on the podcast a while ago, with a guy his name's Gerard Long, and he has been through some of the most pain of anyone that I've ever talked to. But he's actually one of the most joyful people I've ever been around. And as I'm listening to you, I just I agree with what you're saying. I think, and what I'm hearing from you as well, is there is something about perspective. Like joy is found in perspective. Yeah. We can have moments of like emotionally feeling happy, or even like a dopamine hit from anything that makes us feel happiness and good feelings. But I do think, and when we had the conversation with him, it was so clear, because in these terrible negative experiences, actually two of his children passed away. He had an encounter with the Lord where he saw eternity. And I feel like joy is found, like you were saying, in the light of eternity, and having this kind of longer perspective and bigger perspective. And even outside of Christianity, if you're not a Christian, when you're able to like see the long haul for something, you can maintain hope and maintain joy, where it's like we get so anxious when we're all like myopic and just so focused on, this is what's happening to me this present moment. But yeah, it's really interesting just what you're saying, Maya, about the perspective that brings joy.
Yeah. And honestly, too, whenever you think about, like, I can't even imagine all the things that he went through and all these different things. But I remember, like, in my talk and like kind of what you were saying is about uncomfortability, you know, like producing joy, you know, it's like uncomfortability. What does it do? It gives you perspective, you know, that allows you to have that joy, you know, that allows you to realize, oh, this is what joy is, you know, this is what eternity is, all these different things. So was kind of cool to hear that during it's, you know, that perspective that uncomfortability gives, you know, that being an uncomfortable circumstance it gives to allow you just to really just see the fullness of joy, I believe.
Yeah. Wow. And Maya, what would you say to somebody who is listening to this right now and is in the depths of uncomfortability, and they listen to this and they think it's like, so it seems so hard to think that I could have joy in this current moment. What would you say to that young girl right now?
Makes me sad. Makes my heart hurt, because that is just truly one of those places that you don't wish, as much as there's beauty that comes from it. I don't want you to think that your situation, you know, isn't one that is important and that needs to be heard. And whether it's from a loss, whether it's from a sickness, whether it's from a breakup or whatever, you know, you might be in right now, I just wanted to say before any advice and whatnot is that I'm sorry, and that I hope that you get some time just to take some time just to allow the Lord to wrap his arms around you, truly, just to wrap his arms around you and just sit with him and cry to him. I mean, I wish that we could be their person to get to do that with you, but I feel like that's something that I don't ever want to minimize, that pain and that's this season. Because I go back to just times in my room when I was alone in that season. And I think it's okay not to know how to express your feelings. But I think that one of the things that I would say is to start. And I would say just anywhere. I remember my grandmother, she'd be like, even if you don't have like the perfect wrapping of how to say it or whatnot, just say it, you know, just talk. And I don't mean, honestly, really even to the people around you. Yes, I think that's the second step, but I feel like the first step was me just expressing everything that I felt to the Lord, even though it was so uncomfortable even to say the things that I felt, you know, of God, like, why am I alive? Like, did you mess up? Like, should I, you know, like all these different things, like just expressing them to the Lord, you know. I think that's the most important thing that you can do. And I just want to encourage you with that, whoever might be listening to this, but I would say that was the first step, is expressing to the Lord, no package, no bow, just how you genuinely feel and what you're going through in your emotions. And then after you do that, I would allow maybe some time in the Word, whatnot. And then I would say the second step of expressing is, do you have a mentor or somebody that you can express it to, like maybe a family member or somebody in the church or somebody? I would say I would give like this to definitely try and talk to somebody who believes in the Lord and follows the Lord. But I would say to go to them and express to them how you're feeling, and just be like, hey, you might just need someone to listen, and just be like, hey, I'm just going to preface this with, I just need you to listen of how my heartache is feeling or how I'm feeling and how I'm doing. And then you might not want any advice just then, but at least you've opened up a conversation to where somebody knows how you're feeling, because that is so important. To realize that you're not alone and that you're not going to have to go through this alone. And even if you just express it, you don't have any advice, you don't have any, you know, you're not trying to package it even yet. You're not trying to put a bow on it yet. Like, just allowing them to know your story, to know what's going on in your heart. And then maybe a few days later you call and be like, hey, so I kind of been thinking about some things that I told you, and I actually feel a little bit, you know, like better in this aspect, or this, just the beauty of getting something off of your chest and off of your mind, and allowing, you know, just getting it out, and then allowing people to kind of speak into it. I just think is so beautiful. So I would say, just not trying to rush that process, because I don't know exactly how deep you might be in an uncomfortable season with, I know, loss and grief and all those different things. But I think just definitely taking those baby steps to expressing and to getting that advice, and not even advice, but just truth into your life, because that is what will hold you firm. That is what you need to rebuild on. I remember whenever I was going through that time and some other times in my life that have been difficult, I would always say, sometimes you have to break to rebuild. And I remember, so I remember when I was in that season, that was kind of me. And then rebuilding is like you rebuild with truth, and so allowing those people that you express to really rebuild your life, rebuild your heart, and your mind with truth, I would say, is something I would tell you. And just know that you are not meant to do it alone. And you're truly, I think that's something that really helped me as well, is realizing that it was okay to open up to people and then I needed to. And if it's something where you even need to get talk to a counselor or talk to somebody about that, it's something that maybe your friends can't help you with, or your parents or the people in the church, 100% doing that I think is so important too. And there's some really great Christian counselors out there that are ready to just share and help and show you that you're not supposed to do it alone.
Yeah, that's so good. As you're talking, Maya, I'm just thinking about how in John 15, Jesus, it's the chapter on abiding, and Jesus says, "Abide in me and I in you, for apart from me, you can do nothing." But when we abide in him, that will bear much fruit. And it's this whole section where he's talking about kind of remaining, and the idea of abiding is like similar to what you're saying of someone just sitting with us and hearing us out, and we're having this relational interchange. And at the end of this section, he says, "I've said this to you so that your joy may be complete." And he's actually talking about joy in this chapter. And so I think there's something so significant to abiding in him that produces joy, and even with people.
Yeah.
And I'd love to ask you if there was a specific moment when you were in the depths of it that either a person or the Lord just really heard you and made you feel that seenness and withness.
Ooh, that's a really good question. I go to one that might seem a little bit odd, but I remember whenever I was first getting after my car accident, my husband, my fiance at the time, lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and that is Atlanta traffic is just wild, and there's 6 lanes of traffic and all the different things. And I remember I was just so we were driving at night, and my car accident was at night, and my husband was driving me, and I was just absolutely freaking out. I have never felt an anxiety, full-blown panic attack before. But I mean, I was just I could not, I was I'm going to die. I could not get my head around the fact that cars can drive past me, and I was going to be okay. It was just for some reason in that moment, I just panicked and I just freaked out. And I think what was so cool about that, and even the specificness that happened in that moment when I was with him and with my fiance, my husband Chance, is that in that moment, so I had this full-on freak out, and all that Chance is doing is just calming me, and he's just there. He's not saying, "Maya, get yourself together, stop doing it, it's okay, you're fine," he's not yelling at me. He's genuinely just "Maya, it's okay, I love you, we're gonna be okay, I love you, we're gonna be okay, I love you, we're gonna be okay." And I know that's kind of a different one, but that moment comes to my head because I was letting it all out. I wasn't, and it wasn't you. I had to, and it was so sweet because Chance was just abiding with me, and he wasn't trying to yell at me. I think sometimes we think abiding, the Lord's just gonna, and yes, he might correct us, and I didn't have to have my anxiety, but he's also right there saying, "Maya, I love you, it's gonna be okay." And so that moment just comes to my mind because it was one of those moments where I look back on now, I'm thank you, God, that you allowed that to happen when I was in the car with Chance, when and then he was able to really just show up in my life. And I feel sometimes we can be kind of scared to kind of maybe you're really struggling with social anxiety or something like that, and so you want to go run off and then have the panic attack. Maybe bring a friend with you if you can. I know that might be awkward, it might be weird, but allowing somebody into that moment where they can just show you so in that moment you have a bajillion different thoughts, and the Lord's is not necessarily one of them. You have all these different thoughts, and you're not thinking about truth. You're freaked out. And so maybe bringing a friend where they can remind you of that truth, and they can really just be "It's okay, you are loved, this is going to be okay. I'm holding your hand, I'm right here, I don't know. I just feel that is just one of the ways, kind of, if maybe you're I've been in the uncomfortable position for so long, and I don't feel like I've had really that breakthrough moment, blah, blah, blah. It's like, maybe you just invite somebody with you in those moments that are really hard. Stop hiding them from people. Like, allow people in to get to be in those with you. So I felt like I could have, held that in and just like burst it whenever we got home in the bathroom by myself. But instead, like, I was comfortable with Chance, and I was like, I can't, and so maybe choose somebody that you're comfortable with to kind of allow them to see that and speak that truth in your life. Because then after that, I haven't had a moment like that since, but it was him being able to like just calm me in that moment. That was just such a beautiful gift from the Lord.
Yeah, and I remember when I first moved from New Zealand to LA, and I didn't have many friends. I realized I had this lie in me that I wasn't worthy of an experience like you just explained. Like, I just thought, oh, if somebody really saw who I am, maybe they'd run away and they wouldn't want to choose me. And I also was known growing up as someone that was joyful, and I had like friends that when I wasn't joyful, they're like, what's wrong with you? And so then I thought, oh, I have to always be joyful. Yeah. And so like all these things that the Lord needed to like expose, like these lies in my heart. And I remember one time I had just gone to therapy. I came back, and my friend Tatiana, she showed up at my house with chocolate, and she just walked into my house and just like hugged me. Like, it was just like this. There was no agenda to her presence, and it was such a non-judgmental presence. And she sat there. We ate chocolate. She didn't get me to dissect everything I talked about in therapy. She just was there. And I ended up telling her and like crying. And she said to me, your vulnerability is so precious. Like, it's such an honor to be here right now with you. And she kept repeating those two things over and over again. And it started to like rewire this lie in my mind that like I wasn't lovable when I'm sad and when I experience grief. And I share that because I just think somebody's listening to this right now and they don't feel like maybe they don't have friends that would join them in their uncomfortable moments, but it's actually deeper. They don't think they're worthy of somebody being with them. They don't think somebody would love them when they're in their uncomfortable. And I just want to encourage you, not only is the Lord there when you're feeling uncomfortable, but there are friends out there in the world that would find your vulnerability and a mess an honor to be at.
That's so good. I love both of your guys' stories because there was actually a piece of it on both of your parts that required courage because it's not easy. Essentially, you're experiencing this moment that can feel embarrassing. Like you're having past trauma come up, and this is with someone you love. And, it can, in those moments, we can have this desire to like fight or flight and get out to protect ourselves. And then same with you, Riley. That was a really vulnerable moment, but you both chose to allow someone in to that messy space. And it's such a beautiful picture, especially yours, Maia, of your husband being there, you allowing him in, of a picture of the Father as well, who wants to be with us in that messy space. But what do you guys think? Is there a link between courage and joy? What is that link between those two?
I love, you talked about it earlier. I love the picture of kind of a beautiful picture of joy really is dancing in the rain, And I think that if you look at it and say you have like the storm of life, the rain cloud going on and whatnot, it takes courage to start that dance, to start dancing in the middle of the rain and whatnot. It's like you might look a little silly or you might, it's like it takes courage to in the middle of a difficult season, to be like, or to even a difficult like just day where you're just having one of those days where, where everything goes wrong. It takes a little courage to change that mindset and be like, and to see that truth and be like, wait, I have breath in my lungs. It might look a little weird that I'm happy today after XYZ, after I lost my job, after all these different things or whatnot's gone wrong, but I'm going to take a little more courage, and I'm going to choose, to have some joy. And I think that is funny that you said, like, I love that you asked for the link because there 100% is, because I feel like it just takes a little courage, to actually take that decision into your life and be like, oh, I'm going to acknowledge joy today and I'm going to have it, I'm going to choose it. And so I love that so much. And also I feel like it takes courage to kind of change your brain from one of those woe is me, you know, or something's going along and you're just having one of those bad days or a bad week or a bad month. It takes a little courage to kind of be like, you know, I am gonna, like, I'm alive. You know, I have this breath in my lungs, and although it's not been perfect and whatnot, like I'm so thankful to be here, and I'm gonna really change this around. And I think that's a really cool link, as so to speak. And I think it really does take a little courage to have joy sometimes.
That's really good. And it almost, as you're speaking, I would say it's almost like courage is the source, but joy is like the result.
Yeah.
Like we need courage
That's good.
to be our source for these moments where we're choosing between two options of like, woe is me versus the Lord. Like, the Lord, can I smile in this moment? And then the result ends up being joy. But when we choose like to have courage in uncomfortable moments, I feel like what Will's saying is it's like deepening the joy. Yeah. It's not like this specific. It's not this very like high, lighthearted joy that we're talking about right now. Like, we're talking about a deep joy that comes through hard moments. Yeah. Because like there is a difference for me if it's like, what are the things I love that give me joy? And it's like coffee in the morning or like dancing versus like, oh, I'm going to choose to have joy in the storms of my life. Like, that's a deep joy versus like the lighthearted joy. But when it's the deep joy, we need courage to get to the result of the deep joy.
So good.
It's so good. And I feel like it can almost become comfortable to stay in that place when we're going through a really difficult season. Like, if I think back to when I was depressed, this is before I knew the Lord, it was almost a place of comfort, the self-pity and staying in, life is so bad, and like feeling really bad for myself. And I don't mean to minimize anyone that's listening where you're at, because I do think that there are chemical things that happen. We do need to seek professional help. If you're experiencing depression, anxiety, we do encourage you to seek out professional help from counseling, from a psychiatrist. But I found for myself that I would sometimes stay in this place longer than I needed to, because there was comfort. It was easy, and it can actually take courage to like you were saying, Maya, to be joyful. It's like, oh, is this okay to be grateful today, even when all of this is going on? Like, I think of if you were in a circumstance, in like if you're at a funeral, you know, and everyone is experiencing extreme sadness, there still is a choice. There's still like a positive light where you can celebrate the goodness that was this person's life that you're grieving. While at the same time experiencing those negative emotions. But I'd love to shift a little bit here. Maya, you live a very courageous life, and it's very unique. Just meeting you, you're so mature and you're so joyful, like behind the scenes. And I remember this one moment where I think this was behind the scenes at the TED Talk. Yeah. I think Riley dropped her salad, or someone dropped their salad, and you immediately were down on your knees cleaning it up. And this is like, while everyone's practicing, you know, TED Talk, big thing. And I just remember you down on your knees cleaning it off the ground immediately. No one asked anything. And I think that you just are someone that we should look up to, like in our generation, that you're living courageously. And I love specifically how you're charting your own path. You're a speaker, and you have this clothing business that you started. Can you tell us, like, how did you come to living this way of living your own path and courageously kind of charting your way?
Well, that is very sweet that you remember that story. It unfortunately was my own salad that I just threw it everywhere on accident. And it was so sweet. But that is so sweet that you would remember me even on my hands and knees picking it up, because that was just a hilarious moment to have happened, and so and whatnot. But I think that honestly, before I knew God, I just come back to this one time that kind of, I feel like, kind of helped me, like, why. It's funny that you say that it's a courageous life, when to me, I'm just like, what? Like, I'm like, I don't, it's just like the things Lord's put on my heart things, and then you just do them, it's like, I feel like that's a really cool part about like living with the Lord and abiding in him. Like you said earlier, is that once I made that decision to live with the Lord, he just started putting ideas on my heart, and then we just, started doing them together. It wasn't like I just made this decision to be courageous one day. It was like, no, the Lord is, I don't even know if I'd consider myself that. It's just that the Lord is, just bringing me that in directions. He brings you with him, or you get to go with him, and so I think a little bit of that rubs off on you here and then, and maybe that's why it looks like it to you, but that's so sweet. And before I really knew the Lord, I was in college. I went to Florida State University. It's a huge party school, and I was doing all the things at the party school, and I was just really struggling, with just all the different things there, and just all the options and whatnot. And I remember I just got to this point where I had just hit rock bottom in my college career and my college experience. And I was just like absolutely depressed. I was so anxious. I was miserable. I was so disappointed in myself. I knew, I was like, this is not who Maia was created to be. This is not who I was created to be.
Yeah.
And I made a really bad mistake one night, drinking way too much and just having a really, really something, just all the bad things. And I woke up the next morning, and I remember one of my friends was trying to console me, and she was like, Maia, like, it's okay. It happens to everyone. It's okay. It happens to everyone. And I remember she said that, and it was like, I couldn't even think before I spoke. And I said, if this is how everyone live, if this is being everyone, I do not want to be everyone. And I think, honestly, and then after that moment, I just really started following the Lord, just desiring. I was like, I don't want what everyone has. I don't want, all of these different things. I've had them all. I've tried them all. I've done it all. I was like, I just want you, God, And so after that, I just really started walking with him. It didn't look perfect. It was a mess at some points, but I was walking with him, and that is the most important thing. Then he would give me little things to do. He would speak to me or show me things, and sometimes, and I say that, and it's not like it was always like this audible, words spoken over me that I heard. It was like, do this, make this, but it was just like little promptings in my heart that, or just little conversations I had that inspired me and whatnot. And then this walking with the Lord just continued to walk with the Lord and walk with the Lord, walk with the Lord. And he's done some really beautiful things, and also really taught me to be courageous in some moments, like TED Talk, or, like just doing your own podcast and or all those different things. And I think that it just is so cool to see how I feel like really it's just been that walk with the Lord that's kind of brought me there, and just saying yes to those little things. And then at the end of the day, you look back and you're like, oh, wow, like, Lord, you really, you really brought me here, and you really did this. And not all that to say, it doesn't mean that it's just like a piece of cake, it does require that boldness, that courage. But I think that once you start, it's kind of like this thing where it's like, why wouldn't I keep on going? Why wouldn't I keep on walking with him? And the courage gets not easier, but it becomes more of a habit than, like, you don't even have to think about it. You're just like, yeah, like, yes, Lord, like, this seems a little crazy, but I'm gonna have a little more courage. I remember there was one thing that I said actually before TED Talk, and this helps me if you're somebody right now who you're like, okay, I have something crazy on my mind. I have something the Lord's given me, and I'm just like, I need a little more courage. And this is something that has just radically changed whenever I speak, whenever I do things that I just need a little more courage for. And I said, Lord, I pray, and I'm like, Lord, what would happen if I walked on your word? If I walked out on your word? And then I say, let's find out. And then I just go out there and I speak, or I do whatever it is that he has me do, that he has me doing. And that has just given me so much peace, because if you look at the Bible, I have my Bible right here, it's all these people, the stories that are just mind-blowing and incredible and beautiful to us are the ones where we watch people who have walked out on Jesus' word. Do you ever read stories in the Bible and you read someone, you're like, dang it, just walk out on his word. Like, he just told you, like have trust. And so I think to myself, and I'm like, man, I do not want to be one of those people. I want to be somebody who I walked out on God's word. And then I say, and let's find out, because sometimes it looks like, something really cool happening where, everything's said perfectly. And then sometimes it doesn't look like that. And, what's so cool is I look back and I get done with whatever it is I did, whether it's clothes or speaking or whatever. And I look back and I think, it might not have been exactly what I thought, might not have all turned out just right with the package, the bow, but I walked out on his word. And that's all that I can ask for. That's all that I can do as a person, as Maia, and whoever you are listening to this. And so I feel like that's kind of how, to answer your question, I feel like the Lord's brought me in that path. And if you're somebody who maybe needs to say that to yourself today, it's been something, it's been a beautiful one that God's given me, that's really helped a lot. That. So helped calm any nerves, and before maybe you have a big meeting or whatnot, and whatever realm that you're in that Lord has you doing something in, is what would happen if you walked out on his word? And I also ask you that, to maybe you need to, ask yourself that, like, what would happen if I walked out on his word in my life right now? And let's go find out. So
that's so
good. Yeah.
Maia, you're seriously amazing. And I love what Jack said earlier. Like, you are truly somebody this generation should and can look up to. And I just want to thank you so much for just being here and like investing into this community. And as we end, I would just love to know, how can our people be praying for you, and how can they be supporting you? Like, is there any way we can support you, and how can we pray for you?
That is a good question. I would say for prayer, something that you'll find once you start, having courage and walking with the Lord and all these different things, is, or at least something that I've found, is I just get a bajillion ideas every day. And that some of them, yes, it's some of them are not from the Lord. They're, they're not, like, they're cool ideas. They might be fun, but I'm like, yeah, that might not be from him. And so I think that if you were to be praying in any aspect for just me, I would say just praying that for the discernment over life, that the discernment to, kind of take all these bajillion ideas, and decide which ones, and find out which ones are from the Lord, is really one of those. And if you want to follow along or anything, I love to make things. I really love to do one of the bajillion ideas. Some of them are usually clothing and different things like that. And so I love to just make things. Some of them are scripture inspired. Some of them are, just joy inspired, all the different aspects. And so if you want to follow along, that's mmdesigns.life. And then my personal is Maia Huff. And feel free to DM me, message me. I love getting DMs. I love voice memoing back. So if you're a voice memoer, that's a great thing to me. I just love hearing people's stories. I mean, honestly. So if there's anything that maybe spoke to you, or just anything that you want to share, I just love hearing stories. And I think that it's one of the most beautiful things that we've been given, is the story of our lives. And so I'm just... yeah, that's pretty much how you can keep up with me. And I would love to somewhat get to keep up with you in whatever aspect it is.
Aww.
Thanks, Maia. And we'll have all that linked below for our listeners. And to our listeners, I just want to encourage you. Courage is a muscle, and it's something that you can grow in. And it just takes little decisions. And so we want to challenge you, if you've been in a tough season, get into the word and see the perspective in the light of eternity, and abide in the Lord, and find a good community to plug into, or some trusted person that you can share your current struggles with. We know it's going to take vulnerability and it's going to take courage, but in the end, you'll experience joy. So thanks so much for joining us. And thank you so much, Maia.
You're amazing.
Oh, y'all are. I'm cheering y'all on. And I'm so, so pumped for this podcast and all that's to come and all that has already been going on. It's such a gift to be here. So seriously, thank y'all. And y'all are some role models, absolutely, in every single aspect of the way. And I'm just so, so overjoyed that people get to listen to y'all and get to hear just all the incredible things that the Lord's done with y'all's lives, and just all the incredible truth. So I'm really proud of you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maia.